Good evening and welcome to the Channel Studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. Brazilian senators have voted to recommend charging President Jair Bolsonaro over his handling of the devastating COVID pandemic. The investigation lasted 6 months, with the committee approving a 1,300-page report on the government's failings during the crisis. The report also recommended bringing charges against 2 corporations and 77 other people, including 3 of the president's sons. Mr. Bolsonaro has insisted his government did the right thing and says the recommendations were driven by political and electoral motivations. The US Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, has spoken with the deposed Sudanese Prime Minister. Abdallah Hamdok and his wife were released from detainment on Tuesday after the military coup in the country Monday. The Secretary welcomed the Prime Minister's release from custody and reiterated his call on Sudanese military forces to release all civilian leaders in detention and to ensure their safety. For the 3rd day running, there have been protests against the military takeover. Here, people marching in the northeastern city of Atbara. Hong Kong's legislature has passed a new law banning films deemed to violate China's national security interests, the latest blow to freedom of expression in the territory. Punishment for violating the law includes up to 3 years imprisonment and $130,000 in fines. Critics say the legislation will stifle the vibrant local film industry. Last year, China imposed a national security law on Hong Kong that effectively outlawed dissent. Angela Merkel has spent her first day as caretaker chancellor by meeting the King of Jordan for the very first time.
Seine Majestät, der König Abdullah von Jordanien.
She spoke to King Abdullah about Israel and her hopes for a 2-state solution. She also met the Finnish Prime Minister Sanna Marin. It comes a day after she received her formal dismissal certificate after 16 years in office. Ms. Merkel will lead a caretaker government until her successor is sworn in. The UK Chancellor has delivered his much-publicised budget, saying it will deliver a stronger economy for the British people.
But we are going to do so keeping in mind the need to control inflation. If anybody...
Rishi Sunak announced that the national living wage will go up from £8.91 per hour to £9.50. He also claims the UK is recovering faster than its major competitors from COVID, saying the Office for Budget Responsibility had revised up its forecasts for UK economic growth, with GDP expanding by 6.5% this year, compared to 4% it forecast in March. With Keir Starmer contracting COVID-19, Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves responded to the announcements, saying struggling families and businesses will think Rishi Sunak was living in a parallel universe. At least 2 people have died after a cyclonic storm hit Sicily. In Catania, flooding left streets and town squares underwater. Authorities have issued the highest red alert for Sicily and Calabria, with warnings of potential risks to life and damage to properties. Several people are still missing. With 100 days until the start of the Winter Olympics, China is promising a simple and safe 2022 Games. Beijing will be the first city to stage both summer and winter games, but the event has to contend with coronavirus pandemic and calls from human rights groups for a boycott. All participants will be subject to a daily COVID-19 tests. Unlike this year's Tokyo Summer Games, local spectators will be allowed at events in and around the Chinese capital. Stolen 19th century treasure makes up 26 artifacts from Benin to be displayed in a French museum in Paris before returning to their original country. The collection is called Abomey Treasures and includes thrones, altars and royal statues that were plundered by the French army during the sacking of Abomey Palace in 1892. It will be presented to the public until Sunday as part of an event celebrating the arts and cultures of Benin. Once back home, the artifacts will be displayed in the country's Abomey Museum. And finally, an Italian airport in Rome has presented a new air taxi that will allow people to arrive in the city centre in just 15 minutes. It is a joint collaboration with a German company for the Volo City project to transport people and goods through drones. The new battery-powered service, which promises to allow users to travel in luxurious comfort, is set to be launched in Italy within 3 years. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel Studios in Lagos.